My father knocked, holding the phone that ruined my life. The knock came during the second level of the game. My son's character froze mid-jump. The controller hummed against my palms, then went quiet. Through the open door to the garden, my husband's laugh floated in, mingling with our daughter's shriek as the dog chased Bubbles across the grass. The knock came again. 3 soft taps, as if the knuckles were testing the wood, or the house, or me. I paused the game. The room turned still, except for the faint roll of the washing machine and the tinny soundtrack from the TV. My son looked up at me, his eyes wide. He was 7 and quick to measure a room. I tilted my head toward the hallway. "Bathroom break," I said. He slid off the couch and ran, socks whispering over the floorboards. I reached the door, checked the chain, and opened it just enough to see one tired eye and the gray line of a shaved jaw. "Amara," he said. My chest tightened. The chain held. The porch light showed dust in the air, the back of a taxi idling at the curb, and a man with the same nose I had, the same stubborn angle of chin, the same habit of smoothing the air with his hands when he was nervous. "I don't use that name," I said. He swallowed, and his throat bobbed. He lifted a phone, my old phone, the model I left behind. No, not mine. Hers. Sleek, black, a hairline crack on the corner. He angled the screen to the light. A chat window. A name I knew, and a string of messages I did not. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Please." The controller beeped on the sofa behind me. My son called, "Mom." I shut the door on the man's face. The chain rattled. Inside the house, the washing machine thudded into its spin. I set my fingers flat on the wood, steady as 2 boards, and called into the garden. "Evan," I said, and my husband's head came up. He saw my face, saw the door, saw the shape on the other side. He didn't ask anything. He took our daughter's hand and led her in, brushing bubble soap from her hair. The dog nudged my knee and sat, eyes on me. "Upstairs," I said to the kids. "Brush teeth. I'll come in a minute." My husband touched my shoulder, just once. His touch stayed light. He knew where to rest his hand and where to leave space. When the kids' footsteps reached the landing, I loosened the chain. My father stood under the porch light with a travel bag at his feet. His hair had thinned. His shoulders had settled into a shrug he hadn't had when I last saw him. He tried a smile. It didn't fit. "Let me explain," he said. I stepped aside. He walked in like a guest who had no idea where anything went. He didn't look at the family photos. He didn't look at the living room, at the tiny cars under the coffee table, at the crayon drawing taped to the TV stand with a strip of neon washi tape. He looked only at me and at the phone in his hand, like the 2 of us were the only 2 solid things in the room. My husband stayed by the stairs, close enough to hear, far enough not to crowd me. He didn't extend his hand. My father didn't extend his either. Old habits held the air like wires. "I'm in a hotel down the street," my father said. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "You crossed an ocean," I said. "That's trouble." He wet his lips. I saw something. On her phone. "I'm good with tech, you know." She asked me to clear space and He stopped, changed lanes. I saw chat logs. Screenshots. Her and he said the name of the man. The one whose cologne had once trailed my ex like a shadow through every party we went to. She told him she lied, my father said. She wrote it. That she panicked. That she didn't want anyone to know. She said you caught her and he swallowed again. "There's more." She said she wanted to take it back. That it ate her up. The washing machine clunked and went quiet. In the pause, the dog sighed, long and soft. I took the phone. The screen glowed. The messages were real enough. Timestamps, back and forth, her voice in short sentences, the other voice in longer ones, slow and sticky like honey. My name appeared once. The old name, the one I had put in a box and pushed under a bed in a life I no longer entered. In the messages she wrote. It was the only way. He saw the messages. He would leave me. I had to make him the bad one. It got out of hand. "I can't breathe." I read the words again. The letters didn't move. The night around them did. My husband's eyes met mine. He didn't ask to see the phone. His arms hung at his sides, steady, like anchors you could carry. "You should go," I told my father. "Please," he said, and his voice thinned. "I didn't defend you. I didn't even ask." That day at the station, his eyes dropped. "You stood in that room and looked at me, and he pressed his fist to his mouth. I looked away. My hands tightened around the phone. The plastic edges bit into my skin. A woman's voice came down the stairs. Our daughter, whisper singing to herself, catching a tune without words. The sound ran along the railing and settled like a ribbon over the room. "I cut her off," he said. "I told your mother. She didn't take it well." "I'm not here for your marriage," I said. He nodded without meeting my eyes. "I want to do one thing right. Now," I asked. He lifted a small notebook from his bag, a torn page inside it with a pen line running through 2 numbers. It looked like something he'd carried for a week, checking it every 3 hours. He set it on the coffee table, near the crayon drawing. Our son had drawn a rocket with a cat inside. The cat had stars for eyes. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said. I'll keep your address from her. I promise." Promises were stones with smooth faces and rough backs. They sat pretty on your palm and cut your fingers when you held tight. I opened the door. The night breathed on my face. A car drove past, windows down, bass deep and slow. My father looked at the open strip of dark and then at me. He nodded again. Small, grateful, broken, hopeful, too many things for one neck. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. Good, I said. He stepped out. He paused on the mat and straightened his shoulders, as if he could reset the past by pulling himself up. He turned to go, then turned back. You're happy, he said softly, as if saying it could make it true or keep it safe. I closed the door before he could finish the sentence. Before the knock, there was another door. It was a door at the police station in my old city. A different life, a different air. The hinges squealed. The handle was cold. The room inside smelled like coffee and old paper. My ex sat with a sweater pulled up over her mouth, eyes rimmed in red. The officer asked me questions I answered with the blunt blade of truth. No. Yes. Here. There. I watched my father's jaw set in a line so hard it hurt to look at. When I reached for my mother's sleeve, she moved her arm. That movement was small as a blink. It split my world anyway. After that day, the phone went quiet. The door to the house clicked behind me and did not open again. My friends turned into meanings of bubbles on a screen. Typing stopped. Typing has stopped. I changed my routes, my hours, my name. I mopped floors at a fish shop and came home smelling of salt and vinegar, and nobody said my name. I slept in a room that faced an alley, and at night a cat walked the brick wall like a sentry. I watched him and learned his schedule and made mine around his. When the university emailed that I could take exams off-site, the message had my old name in the header. I stared at it until the letters blurred, and then I went anyway. I passed. I sent the score to myself under my new name, as if that could lift it free from the hands that dragged it down. I stood in line at a tiny clinic with a form that said teacher training in careful block letters. The woman at the window looked over her glasses at me. You sure? She asked, not unkind. I nodded. She stamped the page. Later, on a plane to the other side of the world, I watched the map crawl across the screen. The line curved over an ocean and toward a city with a harbor like a cupped hand. When the wheels touched down, no one knew me, and the air smelled like hot bricks after rain. I walked into that heat and let it wrap me whole. I lived first in a square apartment above a bakery. The baker called me love and told me which roll was softest. The trains sang at night. I learned the sound of their brakes and set my alarms by them. I taught in a classroom where the windows stuck during storms. My students watched me with wide eyes and turned their heads when I wrote on the board. I spoke gently and watched the muscles in their shoulders loosen. Good, I said often to them, to the air, to the woman who stood in front of them holding a marker like a flag. I met Evan on a bus. He set his coffee on the seat and it tipped forward, rolling toward my knee. I caught it before it spilled. His mouth widened in a grin that knocked something open in the morning. You saved my life, he said. It's just a coffee, I said. You saved my morning, he amended. He didn't touch me except for the brief brush when he took the cup from me. He laughed with his eyes. He waited with patience I had only seen in nurses and school librarians. He didn't ask why my hand flinched when his reached for mine that first time. He didn't turn it into a test. He took my hand only when I left it there for him, and when I put it back in my pocket, he didn't complain. We married on a blue day with small clouds like pieces of chalk. There were only 10 people there. His sister, his mother, his nephew with cheeks like apples, 3 coworkers, 2 neighbors, the baker, and the oldest student in my class. She wore a yellow dress and carried a bouquet she had made from flowers she stole from her own garden. We had 2 children in quick turn, as if the world wanted to give us something fast to make up for what it had taken slow. Our son arrived first, angry at the light, fists testing the air. Our daughter came with a soft grunt and one eye open, watching the room like a landlord. The nurse handed them to me, and my arms learned a new weight that made all other weights different. When the mail brought a letter from my home country, I didn't open it. It held only the breath I no longer wanted. I tucked it in a drawer and covered it with instruction manuals and warranties. Still, at night, the drawer ticked like a quiet clock. After my father left, I stood with my palms on the door until the wood cooled. Evan set 2 cups of tea on the table and a plate of apples cut into moons. He didn't ask. I gave him the phone. He didn't touch it. He turned it face down on the table. You okay to talk? He asked. I took a breath and let it out slow. I told him to go back to the hotel. Good. He says he believes me now. I kept my voice level. The words lined up like cans on a shelf. Too late, Evan said, and the words were level too. The dog pressed his head against my thigh. His ears were warm. I scratched the space behind one ear. I drank the tea even though it had gone bitter in the steep. Upstairs, our son hummed a theme song. Our daughter asked for one more story. Evan went up to read. His voice drifted down, easy and low, and the sound settled into the house, into the bowl of the night. I took out a small box from the drawer next to the couch. Inside, rubber bands and folded chargers, paper clips, a single marble, a thin thumb drive. I plugged the drive into the laptop. It blinked once, a tiny pulse. I pulled open the folder titled Past, then the folder titled Evidence, then the one titled Do Not Open. Inside lay scans of statements, a copy of the investigation note that said insufficient evidence, 5 emails from the university about approved accommodations, a grainy photograph of me walking out of a police station with my hands in my pockets and my chin up, because it was the only way to keep the sobs from spilling through my mouth and onto the street. I scrolled without reading. I scrolled like you run your hand along a fence you once climbed and cut your jeans on. My father's phone sat on the table like a black stone. It didn't vibrate. It didn't ring. I slept badly. In the morning, I told the school I was taking a day. I kept my voice cheerful and light, as if the word day was enough to hold back a tide. I walked the kids to school with Evan. We held hands for the length of a street, and then each let go to take a small hand in ours. At the gate, our son turned and ran back and pressed his face into my hip. He didn't ask about the knock. I didn't say anything either. We watched two birds argue in the tree above the footpath, feathers ruffled, their feet gripping the same branch. When they flew off in different directions, he nodded like that was the ending he wanted. At home, the air had a morning split to it. The angle of light made everything look cleaner than it was. I wiped the counter with long strokes and didn't miss the corner under the toaster. Evan stood with his hands on the back of a chair, waiting. He knew the timing of me better than anyone. He knew when to wrap his arms around me and when to lean his weight into furniture instead. "Do you want me here for the next bit?" he asked. "Yes," I said. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The words were careful and stiff. "I am sorry I came without asking. If you want me to leave town, I will. If you want to tell me anything, I will listen. I won't bring your mother into it. I am at the Bluebell Inn, room 18. Dad." It was the last word that caused something to tip in my chest. Not Papa, not Father. Dad, like a pretense at what we were. The muscle in my jaw jumped. I typed back. "Stay 2 days. Then go. We'll talk once." I walked to the sink and turned on the tap. The water ran clear and fast, then cooled. I let it run and watched the stream thin when I turned the handle. The dog propped his feet on the cabinet and looked in the basin as if hoping something edible would fall out. I turned off the tap. "Let's go," I said. The Bluebell Inn sat between a pawn shop and a florist with a bell that rang too hard. A chalkboard on the pavement read warm scones and the N was backwards, a line missing. The hallway smelled like old carpet and curry. A television murmured behind a door. A woman with a cigarette behind her ear watched me go past and then laughed at something her phone said. I knocked on 18. The door opened fast. My father had been standing behind it, hand on the handle like a teenager waiting for a ride. He stepped back when he saw Evan. His eyes landed on Evan's left hand and the ring there, then on mine. He asked if we wanted tea. We said no. He didn't know what to do with his hands. He tried to put them in his pockets, then remembered he was in sweatpants and patted his thighs instead. He sat on the edge of the bed and I took the chair by the small desk. Evan stood by the window and looked out at the alley because the room had 3 seats and giving my father the bed was a tiny gift I didn't want to deny. "I told your mother," my father said. I showed her the messages. "And?" I asked. He looked past me. "She cried. Said if there was no proof back then, there's no proof now. Said this could be fake too. Said people can fake anything. You do it on computers. She still thinks a lie weighs more than a life," I said. He flinched. He gave me a manila envelope, messy with air. Inside, printed screenshots, cropped so the names showed. I didn't need them. I didn't want them. I spread them anyway. The bedsheet made a field of white, and the black words crawled over it like a marching thing. I folded the papers and put them back into the envelope and laid it flat on the desk. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I wanted to look at you and say I was wrong," he said. "I wanted you to hear it from my mouth." "You already said it," I said. His eyes shimmered. He blinked fast, ashamed of the wet. He used to scold me for crying. "What does that fix?" he asked, voice caught in his throat. "Nothing," I said. "It fixes nothing at all." He nodded. The muscles in his shoulders untied, then nodded again. He looked at Evan. "You take care of her," he said. "I do," Evan said, calm, simple as a fact. My father nodded again, as if the nods were the only language left to him. He stood. He took a step toward me as if to reach. I didn't move. He didn't either. He dropped his arm and stuffed his hands into those pocketless pants again, an old man who didn't know where to put his shame. "I'll go home," he said. "I know," I said. On the way out, in the hallway, I stopped and pulled a notebook from my bag. Not the notebook of his mine. Soft cover, green, frayed at the corners from living inside my purse. I wrote down 3 letters and 4 numbers. My brother's number. I wrote, "If you want to talk to someone, try him. He won't protect you from Mom. He never could. But he'll tell you when to shut up." I slid the note under the door. A small thing. A thread to a place we used to live in. Then I walked back into the thin sunlight with Evan beside me. Our steps matched, as if we'd practiced this sidewalk. He stayed 2 days. He didn't call. I didn't call. On the 3rd morning, I woke to a message from an unfamiliar contact. "I'm sorry. She told me she blocked me from your number years ago. I tried to send you money and it bounced. I tried 27 times to call and she said you hung up. I know you probably hate me. I just never stopped. Adrian." My brother had always been the loud one, the good-looking one, the one who rustled up a group for a game and never remembered whose turn it was. I stared at the message until it became dots on a screen. Then I answered. "We will start with video. 5 minutes. No kids." His response came in a rush. "I will behave." We set a time. We were 2 hours apart and 10 years apart and it still worked. He called. We looked at each other through small glass windows. He had our father's nose and my mother's eyes and a new crack along his forehead from a rugby game. He breathed out a long breath that fogged his screen. "You're okay," he said. "You're really okay." "I'm not dead," I said. He passed a hand over his mouth, grounding himself. "I sent you money. She blocked it through the accounts. I tried again under a different name. I didn't stop. I know, I said. He brightened until I added, now. He grinned anyway. He was still the boy who found light in a shed with no windows. Can I meet them one day? Your kids. Maybe, I said. We will see. We talked about nothing. The old dog. The new cafe at the corner. The gym he joined and never went to. The packet of chili crisps he mailed me anyway months ago that arrived opened and empty, the customs note inside apologizing for the confiscation with a stupid smiley face doodled in the margin. He laughed so hard he coughed. He promised to write to avoid our mother's ears. I told him not to come without asking. He promised again. After we hung up, I sat on the stoop and watched the street. The neighbor brought out her plants and talked to them. A teenager stomped past in black boots, scowling at his phone. The mailman whistled a tune with no start and no end. A text popped up. A number I didn't know, but different. A handful of words. I'm sorry. Her. I stared. Then I put the phone face down on the step. A cloud moved over the sun and the air cooled in my throat. I picked up the phone and typed, "Report yourself. Then don't contact me again." I sent it. A while later, 3 dots appeared. They blinked for a long time and became nothing. The silence spread like a spill over the road and the roofs and the day. That night, when the house was quiet, I went to the cupboard and pulled down the box of photos. We had printed them on purpose old school, so they could live on paper and not just in a cloud. I spread them on the coffee table. The kids' first day of school in new shoes that hurt by lunch. The picnic where the dog stole half a sandwich and rolled in the bun paper like it was a luxury mat. The blue day of our wedding, Evan's tie crooked, my hair coming loose in curls like question marks. I stacked every photo and slid the pile into an envelope. I took out an old address book. In the line for my parents' house, I wrote a name I hadn't written in years. Then I crossed it out and wrote return to sender. I sealed the envelope with a strip of tape that said fragile in red. I didn't mail it. I placed it on the shelf where I keep the board games. The kids would ask about it. I would say later. And one day, maybe I'd take it to a mailbox and send it into the past so the past would know what it lost. Months passed. Seasons changed with small notes. The weight of the quilt on the bed. The way the dog stood at the door waiting for the rain to stop. The tan lines on my children's arms. The inbox caught small things. Permission slips, sale alerts, a message from my brother with a photo of his son sitting in a box like a cat. He smiled into the camera. Behind him, a woman's hand rested on a counter. I texted back, "She knows about me?" He wrote, "Yes." She says, "Hi." She says she wants to meet you. Calm down. My father didn't message. The silence grew soft around us. I didn't prod it. One afternoon after school, our son asked about the knock. He didn't look up from his Lego castle. "Who was that?" he asked, casual, like asking where the scissors lived. "A man from my old life," I said. "Like a teacher?" he asked. "Sort of," I said. "He taught me what not to do." He shrugged and fit 2 bricks together. He didn't need more. Kids accept the shapes you give them if you hand them with steady hands. That night, I took their bath time a little longer. I poured water over their hair and watched the suds slide down their backs. I made boats out of my hands and let them float arm to arm, finger to finger, skin to skin, safe as cups. I tucked them in and stood by the door and watched their chests rise and fall. Evan came beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. We stood like that until the room became dark around the edges, and then we walked downstairs together, our steps quiet and matched, like always. In the living room, the envelope still sat on the shelf. The word fragile was fading where the sun hit it each morning. I took it down. I held it in my hands. I turned it over once and then again. I set it back in the same spot. I turned off the lights. In the dark gloss of the TV screen, my reflection watched me move. I put my hand against the glass until my palm print bloomed and then faded. I opened the blinds. The moon hung low over the trees like a watchful eye, not judging, just there. A year later, the door knocked again. Not a soft test. A firm knock, the kind the postman uses when there's a box too big for the slot. I opened it and found a man on the step with a suitcase and a shy smile that looked like mine in a mirror after a long day. "Adrian." He raised a hand in a small wave. "I asked first," he said. "See?" I asked. Behind him, a taxi idled. The driver checked his watch. The smell of hot rain rose from the pavement. My brother fidgeted with the handle of the suitcase. He looked over my shoulder, into the warm light of the hallway beyond me, into the voice of a child singing somewhere deep in the house. "Can I meet them?" he asked. "Yes," I said and stepped aside. He came in slowly. He took off his shoes. He set them neatly against the wall. He walked into the living room and stopped at the shelf. He touched the edge of the envelope lightly with a finger, then dropped his hand. He looked at me. He did not say the word sister. He did not try to name the gap. In the kitchen, Evan shook his hand. He said, "I'm glad you're here," and meant it. Adrian flushed, pleased at being welcomed without a test. The kids came in behind me. They stared at him the way children stare at Santa in a grocery store. Interested, skeptical, practical. "I'm your uncle," he said. "The kind that eats all the snacks if you let him." Our son handed him a cracker. Our daughter looked at his shoes by the door and said, "Your feet smell like airplanes." Adrian laughed until he cried. He wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand, embarrassed and not embarrassed at all. We sat at the table. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about the school's new rule about hats. We talked about the dog's sudden preference for cucumbers. We talked about a cartoon I had never seen but almost knew by heart, thanks to the voices that lived in our house. Adrian watched us like a man in the dark watching a house lit up at night, guessing at the shapes inside. When he left, he wrapped his arms around me, light as if I were made of spun sugar. He said, "I am sorry I wasn't there," and I didn't say, "You tried," because the words would have landed wrong in the crowded air. Instead, I brushed a crumb off his shoulder and said, "Text me when you land." He walked down the path. He waved from the taxi window as it turned the corner. The tail light blinked out. The night tucked itself around the street. Evan stood beside me. He slid his hand into mine. We stood like that for a while. No words. No explanations. Just the sound of the dog sighing and the washing machine turning and the soft click of a child's door upstairs. I picked up the envelope from the shelf. I pulled off the tape. I took one photo out. Evan and I on a beach, the kids chasing a goal that wanted none of us. My hair blew into my mouth. Evan's eyes were half closed against the wind. We looked like people who were still learning how to hold joy without gripping it too tight. I slid the photo back into the stack and resealed the envelope, pressing the tape down smooth. I didn't write a new address. I didn't write any address at all. I carried the envelope to the closet and set it on a high shelf. Not gone. Not mailed. Not displayed. Just where it could rest. Evan touched my back and left his palm there, warm and steady. He didn't ask what I would do. Neither did I. The house settled around us. The moon slipped behind a cloud and then came out again. The dog stood in the doorway and wagged his tail once, twice, his eyes on us. In the quiet, the front door gave a tiny creak, the kind it makes when the temperature shifts and the wood remembers old shapes. I looked at it and saw not a portal for ghosts, but a piece of my house that swelled in heat and shrank in cold, a thing that moved because it was alive. I breathed in through my nose and out through my mouth, even and slow, and the breath disappeared into the room like steam. Somewhere far away, my father moved around his kitchen. He opened a cupboard and found nothing where something used to be. He reached for a cup and his hand hesitated in the air. He closed the door softly so it wouldn't wake the person sleeping in the next room. He walked to a window and looked out at a street I would not walk again. He stood there until the kettle clicked and the water stopped its small storm. I turned off the lamp. The dark folded over us, warm, patient mine. Outside, the wind picked up and a single dry leaf scraped along the path, a sound like a whisper leaving a mouth. I pressed my palm flat against the cool door I had once kept shut with both hands, and then I let it rest open on its hinges, just an inch. Not for anyone to come in, not for anyone to go out, but to let the summer night breathe through the house, soft as a secret I no longer had to carry.